What's up, guys? Jason of New Age Revolution down here in the cave with another top 5 video. Today we piggyback. That's right, as the cool people say, we piggyback off of the WWF top 5, and we hit you with the NWA top 5. That's right, indeed, it is my 5 favorite wrestlers of 80s NWA wrestling. And this wasn't easy. Not because it was hard to come up with 5. It was hard to not come up with the entire roster. I've never really talked about, my love for 80s NWA Saturday TBS 605 World Championship Wrestling with Tony Schiavone and David Crockett in that beautiful studio. I did talk about it during the Whatever Happened to NWA Wrestling show. But anyway, as a kid, of course, I was more drawn to the colorful World Wrestling Federation, right? The superheroes, the toys, the cartoons, of course. That's why they marketed it that way. But down the dial of our little Greater Rochester Cablevision, pretty much every cable system that first came out in the 80s had the USA Network and had TBS. TBS was a cable mainstay from day one. It was on everybody's cable system, even basic cable. And even today, to this day, I think basic cable includes TBS and TNT. It's a Pepsi this morning, guys. Why? Because it's 11:30 in the morning. And that's a little too early in the day for some adult beverages. But I love this just as much, actually. I'm kind of a Pepsi addict. And I'm probably looking at a future of at least pre-diabetes with the amount of Pepsi that I drink. But anyway. So it was available. NWA Wrestling was available. And if you became a wrestling fan as a kid, at least me anyways, you would consume any wrestling. Any wrestling. AWA was available at the time on TV. Some world-class championship wrestling started to trickle in. Of course, WWF, NWA. To me, it was all just wrestling. In fact, I remember my dad took me to a very early indie show. It was a friend of his who actually wrestled in the WWF in late '83. And he was from Rochester, and he worked with my dad at Kodak. His name was Chico Rodriguez. And he was a jobber on WWF TV about 8 times or so. Well, he put on a benefit show in Rochester in about 84, around 1984. And my dad took me, and it was in a little gymnasium at a high school in town. Not even a high school, it was like a rec center. Yes, it was definitely not a high school, it was a rec center. And they put the ring in the gym, and it held, it was probably like 50 people there. And I was in heaven, because it was wrestling. And Chico Rodriguez was the main event, and they had this championship belt that it looked like somebody had just made in like metal shop class or something. And actually Chico Rodriguez, I assume, was friends with another WWF jobber named Goldie Rogers. And if you go back and you watch some 84 championship wrestling, you'll see Goldie Rogers. And he was this big, hairy guy. Well, Goldie Rogers was also on the card. And then just some absolutely unknowns. I remember a guy named Mad Dog Page, because he signed me an autograph, Mad Dog Page. But anyway, I just went off on a whole nother tangent. But I was like, that was WrestleMania for me, going to that silly little indie show. And so that's why the point of that was I would have watched anything. And so NWA was on kind of more frequently than WWF, or at least equal to. I mean, they were on Saturdays and Sundays a couple of different times. And their shows were longer. Like their Saturday Night World Championship Wrestling show was 2 hours. From the greatest time slot of all time, 6:05 for a kid on a Saturday night, 6:05. And chock full of matches, right? Like yeah, there were angles and storylines in the NWA, but it was one match after the next, followed by a little interview at the podium, and then another match, and repeat, and that. So you got a lot of matches, and there were a lot of guys on the roster. So anyway, my top 5 favorite NWA guys in no particular order. You guys are aware that I am a Ric Flair fan, and so Ric Flair is my one of my favorite, my number one favorite NWA wrestler of the 80s, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. I especially like him during, it's weird to like connect a guy with a belt, a championship belt, but I prefer Flair with the old NWA title, the one that looks like this. This is the title belt that I remember watching Flair come out, and he would never, like, it was never over his shoulder. He would always just hold it. He would always just hold it during the interviews, right? And sometimes he'd like tuck it in his arm. Like he would just, he would just hold it. And I don't know, I don't know what it was about Flair that appealed to an 8-year-old. I mean, what's so, how does an 8-year-old think Ric Flair's the greatest? But I just did. I don't know why. I think I loved the belt. I don't know why I liked him so much. I really don't. Today, using an adult mind, I like the way that the NWA built, like their champion was like that. There was like a business like mind to their world's champion. He was wealthy. He only wore nice suits. You couldn't touch him. He was going to get away with everything. While the WWF, they always had like good guy champions that were superheroes. And Ric Flair is really the opposite of Hulk Hogan in that sense. And so you got this regular guy with this this long flowing white hair, just dressing up and coming out and being this super classy champion. And all these good guys are just dying to get at him, and they get a shot at him, and he pulls it out. He wins, and he wins by cheating or interference. And I loved it. I loved Ric Flair matches. I loved the chop. And then again, going back with an adult mind, they're all the same. All the Ric Flair matches are identical to each other. You can just predict his moveset, as the marks say. But it's true. Like you'll know a Ric Flair match. It's the same format. But I loved it, and I remember loving it like in '85 and '86 when the Great American Bash tour would like hit up 13 or 14 stops, and the NWA would do something really fun during those times. They would let unusual challengers take on Ric Flair for the belt, like Ricky Morton, Hawk. They would split up the Rock and Roll Express, like Michael P.S. Hayes, Jimmy Garvin. They would let those guys challenge Ric Flair for the title. So it wasn't always just Flair Dusty or Flair Nikita. It was Flair versus Animal. And an 8-9-year-old kid is thinking, oh yeah, Animal's going to win the world title. Like, how do you beat Animal, right? I loved it. I loved it. And I really wish I could see some of those Ricky Morton or Robert Gibson versus Ric Flair matches, because those just seem like they'd be good quality matches. Ric Flair, number one, and I met him, and it was the opposite experience of meeting Hogan. It was a bust. Meeting Ric Flair was a bust. I was so excited. I wore the Jax robe, which is not a toy. I mean, it is, I guess. It's a costume, but it's a really good looking costume. And I wore it, and I brought the belt, and I stood in line like an idiot. I always make fun of those people in my head, that are in lines at Comic-Cons with the belts all over their shoulders, and they're wearing the... I'm like, what are you doing? But I was that dork who had the robe and the belt on, and got up there. When you do like professional photo ops, they hustle you in, they hustle you out. They're actually annoying. The handlers there at these shows, they're really annoying. And walk up. I say something. I always say something, that truly I mean. Like, this is, I always talk about my childhood real quick, like 5-second sentence. You're a huge part of my childhood. This is the best moment ever. No acknowledgement whatsoever. No acknowledgement whatsoever. No handshake. No acknowledgement. Just stand next to him. Here I am walking up to him with the belt, with a robe on, and I get zero reaction out of him whatsoever. And I don't even think he knew I was there. He was just kind of, I don't know. So, I never actually spoke to Ric Flair, even though I took a picture with him. But it sits in my, it sits in the collection. It's a bucket list item knocked off. Ric Flair, number 1. The opposite of Ric Flair is my number 2 favorite NWA wrestler. Again, in no particular order. The opposite, the yin to Ric Flair's yang. Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes is my second favorite NWA wrestler because he was, and that was his gimmick, was that he was just the common man, which was his WWF gimmick. But the out of shape, sloppy, beer drinking, tobacco spitting, Dusty Rhodes. The blue collar plumber. Chasing after the regal, royal, rich, bougie Ric Flair, who would never be friends with a guy like Dusty Rhodes. He wouldn't run in, Dusty Rhodes wouldn't run in Ric Flair's circle. And so you had this not an underdog. I wouldn't call Dusty Rhodes an underdog, but you got this guy who's chasing after this top level. And he's not used to it, His gimmick was the son of a plumber, basically growing up in a blue collar family, and I love it. I love Dusty Rhodes. I love it. His promos are mixed for me. They're okay. I don't mind them. He does go off on rants. I never understood like the drawl. I never understood his slang. Like I don't know if it's like Southern. If it's like Texas, or if he's just like, I don't know. There was some things about Dusty Rhodes that I didn't like. I never understood like the dancing in the ring and the Adrian Adonis style over the top. Like when Adrian Adonis did the gay gimmick, he would prance around the ring. I mean, just really stereotypical, silly, prancing around the ring. And Dusty Rhodes would do that, but not be doing the gay gimmick. So I don't understand what he was doing. I never understood like the dances. The bionic elbow, I love that. The elbow drop. Dusty could fly around that ring too, and I think he wanted to do that so that he could bust out of the overweight, out of shape stereotype. So he would just fly around that ring, drop kicks, flying body presses off the top rope. I remember he would do a few times. And bleeding. That was the thing with NWA. If you were going to watch NWA as an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, you were going to see some blood. And it was fun to see that out of Dusty Rhodes, the scarred up face. Everybody as a kid wondered what the heck that thing was growing on his stomach. The famous Dusty Rhodes splotch. And I remember being afraid as a kid because my mom would like look at it and go, "Oh, that's cancer. I think that's a tumor." And I was always thinking Dusty Rhodes was going to die at any moment because he had this, horrible tumor. The famous Dusty Rhodes splotch. Love it. And Eddie Elner in the PWI magazines, like gimmick hated Dusty Rhodes. Would always write horribly about him in his columns. And then Dusty got a chance to win the title, and that was fun. And, he had that weird blonde, like, white guy, afro, bushy, I don't know. Great. I love Dusty Rhodes. I love Dusty Rhodes. Second favorite. Third favorite, I didn't want to do the, I'm a huge Four Horsemen fan. We'll do the tag teams after this. We'll do the top 5 WWF and NWA tag teams. But so I didn't want to just say the whole four horsemen, Arn and Tully, and include them all. But Arn Anderson as a standalone is my third favorite NWA wrestler, and probably one of my top 10 of all time wrestlers. I just love Arn Anderson. Again, I love that the NWA was blue collar, and the WWF was superheroes. So you got one guy really in the NWA that like elevated himself to the A-lister, and then you got all these blue collar challengers just chasing after him. Dick Murdoch and Wahoo McDaniel and guys like that, Manny Fernandez, just hard nosed dudes chasing after this prancing Ric Flair. And Arn Anderson, although he was always a bad guy and never really went after Flair, was fit that mold. He was just a grizzly, and Arn Anderson always looked to be a man. Like he always looked to be in his like 30s or 40s. But I think Arn Anderson started with the NWA when he was like 22 or so. So all those NWA shows with Arn and the Four Horsemen, he's a kid. He's like 25 years old. And I don't think Arn Anderson has a face underneath his beard, because I don't think Arn Anderson has ever not had a beard. I think Arn was born with a beard, kind of a weird birth defect thing. I don't think he has a face under his beard. I could be wrong. That's just what I think. And he's just always looked like a 40-year-old man. And even today, he looks like a 40-year-old man. You see him on AEW. I love Arn Anderson. I would truly love. He's on my list of wrestlers that I would go out of my way to go meet someday. Arn Anderson. I love him. I love how he would always get the undercard title. How he would always have the TV championship, or the national championship when that was around in the NWA. The tag team runs with Tully Blanchard. My God, so good. I love Arn Anderson. I love the Spine Buster. I love everything about Arn Anderson. He's one of my favorites. Next up, and I could have included him in the WWF category, but I think I enjoyed him more in the NWA category. He was never around for super long periods of time, but Barry Windham is my number 4 favorite NWA wrestler. And I love him as a good guy, but I love him more as a bad guy. And we'll talk about this when we do the tag teams, but I was one of the early things that I remember about watching WWF for the first time was it was during the U.S. Express tag team run. And then Windham left, went to the NWA, immediately got into these mega awesome matches with Ric Flair. They talked about the Broadway, the hour-long match or the 45-minute match. And I loved Windham as a thin, babyface, good guy. I loved it. And then out of nowhere, he just turns bad in like 87 or 88. And then, of course, when you turn bad, you got to get a little facial hair. And then he puts on the black glove. And for a while, I didn't, what the heck's the black glove? Then you find out later on, as an adult, that it's Blackjack Mulligan's son. And Blackjack Mulligan had the claw and the glove. And so Barry's doing it. And I love him. I love the lariat, the lariat clothesline, the bulldog. Wow, he sets it up. Boom. Loved that. And definitely a title run. Rodney Garvin was a weird transitional champion. I don't understand the Rodney Garvin thing. So I wouldn't have wanted Barry Windham to win the NWA title for 2 weeks, like Rodney Garvin did. I would have wanted Windham to win it and be their face champion for a little while. But the NWA didn't want that. They did not want long-term face champions. They wanted their figurehead, Ric Flair, until new management took over and decided that Flair was over, outdated in like 90, 91. But, so you got to think. You can't have guys, you can't say who should have won the NWA title, because really nobody should have won the NWA title. They did it the way they should have. And the WWF did it the way they should have when Hogan was up there. I wanted them to have these long title runs. Drop it to Dusty, maybe drop it to Magnum TA, but then get it back. Get it back at the next Bash tour, right? Get it back a couple weeks later. Because you don't have the NWA without Ric Flair coming out and being chased for the belt. Would the NWA have worked if Ric Flair was the chaser for the belt? I don't know. I don't think so. So I can't say, I wish Barry Windham was the NWA champion, because it wouldn't have worked. But I love him, and he's another guy that I really, really, really want to meet. I would like to meet Tully as well. The whole Four Horsemen. Lex Luger was in town a couple weeks ago at a new store that opened up here, Heroes Hideout, about 45 minutes away, and they're going to do signings, which will be fun. And their first big one was Lex Luger, and I didn't go. I didn't have a desire to go. I don't love Lex Luger at all, but I didn't want to meet him. And nothing against what happens to people and getting old and stuff, but Lex Luger is certainly not Lex Luger anymore, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's years of body abuse or what, but I just didn't go. But hopefully that group will bring in some stars and I can meet them. All right, my final favorite NWA wrestler might get a little bit of a question mark by you guys. He came in late in the 80s. He was 88, I believe, was his, around 87, 88 he started making his appearances. But I really love young, good guy, blonde hair Sting. Really do. Crow Sting and today's Sting, no, not interested. But young Surfer Sting, as he was known as in the wrestling world back then, love it. Love Surfer Sting. Love young, in shape, high flying Surfer Sting. Him being a legitimate challenger to Flair, the angle when he joined the Four Horsemen for a little while, and then that awesome, I think it was a Clash of the Champions where they kicked him out of the Four Horsemen, and Ole Anderson was like, "You're done, you're through, you're not with us anymore," and they beat the hell out of him. Loved that. Loved it. Loved, it's just so unnaturally bringing Sting into the Four Horsemen. But, yeah, the early stuff with him, really going after Flair hard, challenging Flair. And I can't remember, how many title runs did Sting have? Was he ever a U.S. champion? I'm talking like early NWA, like 88, 89. I don't remember. I don't think he was. I don't think he was TV champion. I don't think so. I remember there was a chance Dusty and Sting took on Bad Guy Road Warriors at one of the pay-per-views. I think it was a Starrcade. Going after the belts. I really thought that was a dream team that would have, of course, won the tag team titles, and they didn't. But I love Sting, and I loved that he kept the Surfer Sting gimmick until he couldn't do it anymore, and then transitioned into like the weird. It was the weirdest transition ever. You're like super popular surfer California boy Sting, and then you morph into like this dark, unspoken Sting, and then you've stayed with it like your whole career. That's who you are now. Weird. But Sting, love the Stinger. Would like to meet the Stinger as well. But he's always got like the crow look in the pictures. I don't know. So that's my top 5. Honorable mentions, Tully Blanchard, of course. Just Tully Blanchard, nothing intimidating physically about him. He wasn't this musclehead, but what an in-ring talent. What the matches against, he's such a great bad guy. The matches against Magnum TA, the I Quit match, his interviews, him with Baby Doll walking around. He's got the puffy 80s hair, the chest hair bursting out of his shirt. He's got those sunglasses. I love Tully Blanchard. Magnum TA, his short little run, sad tragedy, horrible thing happening to Magnum TA. And of course you hear all the rumors Magnum was going to win the NWA belt. I mean, who knows? But you didn't really get to, on TV, they didn't showcase Magnum's in-ring skills because for some reason they would have like Magnum TA beat guys in 6 seconds. He would get in the ring, he would whip him into the ropes, he would do the belly to belly, and he would win. That was all of his TV matches. I don't know why. I don't know why they were pushing him to be like this Goldberg, beat you with a spear in 10 seconds guy. That was the opposite. That was not his look, so I don't know why he would be able to do that. I remember freaking out as a kid and seeing some magazine pictures of Magnum TA versus Kamala. And I was like, what a match that would be, because that was like, you know, before anybody could hurt Kamala, and, you know, how would Magnum TA hurt Kamala? Jimmy Garvin, I love Jimmy Garvin, the cowardly Jimmy Garvin, always like pulling at his hair, you know, fluffing up his big mound of of hair, and, you know, Precious, his wife, you know, spraying the ring, and I love Jimmy Garvin. He was there late 80s, but you know, the Great Muta was you know, the first time I got to see like that really cool high flying, because I didn't watch any Japanese stuff. I didn't watch any, you know, Mexican wrestling. So I didn't know about, you know, these cruiserweight style moves. And then the Great Muta does this back handspring elbow, and I'm like, oh my God, what was that? But yeah, Great Muta, loved him. NWA Wrestling, so good. It's so good. Is it better than? It's not better than the WWF. It's different. They're both really good for different reasons as a kid. So I can't say one is better than the other, but they're in their own categories. They live separately in my heart. All right, so that's that. We'll do top 5 tag teams of both organizations. I can't really do like a top 5 world class or a top 5 AWA. I don't, you know, that would be hard for me to do. I don't really have any favorites. I would just be naming guys. But we'll do the tag teams, and then we'll do then we'll do some weird top 5s, like my top 5 favorite sandwiches or something. I don't know. Not that would be interesting to you guys, but I'll do it. And that's that. We'll be back, and hopefully we'll get this thing going more frequently again. I got to get back in the groove of doing this. My patio's finally done, so maybe we'll do some shows from out there. Until then, we will see you all next time. Good night now.